cultivate your millionaire mindset using your head and your heart, the right mindset coupled to a super healthy body. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. I'm David, Anthony David Horst, and welcome to Activate Your Millionaire Mindset. And we have a very interesting guest for you today. I'm not going to steal his thunder. Why? Because he knows a lot more about himself than I do, which most people should. You should know more about yourself than anybody else. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce Ross. Ross, please tell us who you are, what your story is, and then obviously how people can get hold of you. Over to you, Ross.
Love to do that. So I grew up a young thug, and my little brother was talking to an Army recruiter. I was 20 years old, so a little older than the average veteran when they join, and I was grilling the recruiter. And what no one in the room knew, including my own mother, she didn't see it at all, was that he totally sold me, because I knew that if I kept misbehaving, I was probably going to jail with all my friends. So I turned to the recruiter as he handed the contract to my brother. I said, "Give me one too." Huh? Everyone in the room, jaw on the floor. So in that moment, I joined the Army Reserves. And oddly enough, I hurt myself almost instantly, because my body belonged to a gentleman that would smoke cigarettes and walk while everyone in gym class would run, with my gym teacher behind me yelling at me. So I joined the Army and had to run every day. And I sprained both ankles over and over and over again. So what it did was it prevented me from being able to do the run standard for the Army, which led to a long string of complications I won't go into. So when I got out of training, which was a nightmare and another very long story I'm going to leave out, I went back and I said, "Hey, I'm hurt. I don't have health insurance. I need a doctor." And the cool thing about the government and the military is everyone is a moron. That's what the people above you treat you like, especially when that's not the case. So it can be incredibly frustrating. So here I am in pain, really no money, no insurance, and they wouldn't explain to me what the problem was, because I kept asking, "I need help. I need help." And they would say, "We're working on it. We're working on it," with no detail. What they needed was my medical records. Of course, at the time, I knew where they were. If anyone had just said Mr. Goldberg, or Private Goldberg at the time, "We don't have your medical records, and without them, we can't get you to a doctor. We can't do that," I would have been like, "Oh, they're here." But instead, they treated me like I was dumb. So I treated them like they didn't matter. And for a year, I refused to go. I said, "I have no interest. You won't take care of me. I don't care about what I agreed to." I'm putting up my middle finger instead of using the words. Um, in that year, a recruiter came and found me. I lost some of my benefits, which is what happens when you don't do what you agreed. But I did go back, and then the war in Iraq started almost immediately after I returned. I felt like I wanted to fulfill my obligation. So I was in an ammunition unit, which means when there's war, we go, period. So when it was our turn, actually before it was our turn, we would go. It was a 6-hour drive to Minneapolis from Madison, Wisconsin. And I sit down at the medical room, and the woman says, "I need your records." And I said, "Ma'am, I don't have them." She said, "I have to vaccinate you then." I said, "Well, I went through basic training like everyone else here. I wouldn't have my rank if I didn't. I don't want those." She said, "Either take off your blouse, your shirt, and give me your arm, or we're sending you to military prison straight from here. You will not be going home."
Wow.
I said, "Okay, well, that's one hell of a pitch. Here's my arm."
Yeah,
So I got a fresh new
not much
vaccine
choice.
record. Yeah, absolutely. And I had very young children. My daughter, I think at that first one, she learned to walk while I was there. She was about a year old. So 6 months later, I went to my unit. I did all the things I was supposed to do. 6 months later, I sit down across from her again, and the new medical record had also been misplaced. So I went, sat across from her, and had the exact same conversation again.
Oh,
So she
no.
gave me the entire routine of military vaccinations. This was the third time I'd received them. The problem was, within 6 months, you're being injected with diseases, right? So my body didn't like that at all. And it started to eat itself. And I'll explain very briefly in a moment what that looked like. 6 months from that, we were going. Like we were leaving 3 weeks later, I believe. We were supposed to deploy and go to Iraq. It was our turn. So I sit down across from this woman, and not only did I have the medical record from before, I had all of them. And I sat them down in front of her. I said, ma'am, I have 3 different shot records. You can refer to any that you'd like. She turned to me and she said, you need a booster. I said, excuse me, bitch, you're crazy. No. She said, give me your armor. We're sending you to Fort Leavenworth from here. You won't be going home.
Oh,
That
wow.
7 months after that, I had just set up my internet business. I had just set it up. It was I think maybe I had maybe 2 weeks to build it all up and do all the things. I went into a coma and I was comatose for 10 days. When I woke up, I could barely feel my feet. We're talking maybe 5% of the feeling I should have had. And I had to relearn how to walk on feet I could barely feel. And without going into the icky details, my digestive system was almost destroyed. It works just enough, but severe nerve damage did some very, very unpleasant things to my digestive system as well. I have fibromyalgia. Um, I will forget things in mid-sentence, like brain damage. My brain and spine swelled. It's called encephalomyelitis. And what happens during that is it kills nerves because they get crushed,
Wow.
depending on where they are and what's around them. And no neurologist, including one of the best in the whole of the United States, they just don't have answers for this sort of thing. It's kind of you get what you get.
That's a bit
And
scary.
medicating, yes, absolutely. When I first got it, it started under my chest and it's now all the way up to my scalp. And I asked my doctors, am I going to go blind? Will I lose my sense of taste? Will I lose my hearing? Every question I asked, the answer was, I don't know. Thankfully, none of those things happened when it progressed. Um, but my sense of touch is almost gone. It gets a little better when you get above my waist, but in my feet, I can step on a Lego and not notice for a moment or two.
Wow.
So, and the pain is micro. Great when I get tattoos. The tattoo artists love it because I don't twitch because I can barely feel it. Um, so this was 2005. I was discharged from the army, but we didn't know that it was their fault. So I didn't put up a fuss. When I rolled up in a wheelchair because I was still relearning how to walk, my unit was like, "Oh, because when you're in the reserves and we're at war, you stay. You are not allowed, no matter, it doesn't matter if you've been in the army for 40 years. I think they would let you go at that point, but generally they
Sure.
um they won't let anybody retire until the war ends. When the war ends, then they could start processing retirements. But because I was sick in a wheelchair, I was of no use to them. So they discharged me, and I didn't know it was their fault at the time. They kept When I went into the coma, they asked my wife, has he had any vaccines lately? And because it was 7 months prior that I had gotten the last one, it didn't connect in her mind. Technically, that was within that time frame where the answer should have been yes. She told them no. So they tested me for everything under the sun. I got 2 spinal taps, MRIs, like all the things while I was sick and while I was in the hospital. I still have a bruise. Like it has the effect of a bruise on my back from one of the spinal taps. If I touch it, it hurts.
Wow.
20 years. So it took almost 20 years for them to realize, oh, we tried to kill this guy. I had every imaginable barrier, but what I wanted was so this disability is not the same as like Social Security. I'm not claiming I can't take care of myself or can't make money. What I want are the benefits that go to myself and to my family. So my medical care is free for life. My kids each get a free 4-year degree and get paid to go to school. I have a 20-year-old, almost 20, and a 22-year-old. So they're looking at that and excited. And my wife gets a payment after I pass on, which is another thing that was attractive. So I fought for this and I won in the last year or so. Again, this is not saying I can't take care of me, I can't take care of my family. This is saying you're jerks for trying to kill me and for having to exist with these challenges for the rest of my life. To be honest, I'm lucky that I'm still here. And when I woke up from my coma, I had made $1,000 in profit while comatose from my internet business.
Just say that again. You'd made $1,000 while you were on in a coma. So it means the business you set up was making money while you weren't even present. Oh man, Ross, that is so powerful. That is, I wouldn't suggest people go
It
into
is.
coma, but I'm
Absolutely.
saying that is a powerful testimony to your business. Well done. Carry on. That's beautiful.
I'm lucky that I'm intelligent. What I did right, and this is something that anyone can do today. I was on eBay, and I would compare that today to being on Amazon. All I did was stole better pictures, totally against the law. Do not steal pictures. Took all of their auction or listing descriptions and edited them to make them better. I had the better listing by far. All the relevant details. I didn't even know what the relevant details were. I took the descriptions from their listings and simply subbed in the details for my products, which again, some of them were from my suppliers. And out of nowhere, I was selling more than them. I learned HTML so I could do the layout of the listings, and I learned how to build a website because they took so much of each sale on eBay. All of these things happened over the year. I learned how to do search engine optimization, which is what I was known for in the early years of the guru side of my stuff. Um, I also made every imaginable mistake. Obviously, I tell the glory story, but I spent $400 on AdWords in 1 hour on a term that made me no money. I got two phone calls and they were angry people who thought I was someone else. 400 down the toilet, like instantly down the toilet. What else? Used a software called Hits Generator. It did not generate real hits or anything of value. I give you that much. I promise you. But what I did learn was what works, what doesn't, and possibly the most valuable thing was how to figure that out without having to test everything. Because in that time, the internet, well, it still really is the Wild West. There aren't crazy regulations and people oversight and people standing over our shoulders, but at least now there are laws. Governments are at least paying attention. Um, in the early days, no one knew what to do. So I got to be an originator, part of the big SEO mind in the early days of the web, 05, 06, not super early. But let's call it the second lineup of experts. And I had ways no one else thought of because people would talk about link building. So I built links in ways like I was big on using social stuff to build out my link profiles for my websites. And as the social networks became more and more popular, we're talking MySpace, social bookmarking, old school stuff. Um, I use those things to increase the authority of my website faster than average. And I was able to rank for things had no business ranking for. It was cheating without cheating, let's call it. So
No, you were just
early
ahead of
on
the
in my
curve.
business, I
Ross,
was
you were,
able
you were just
to
ahead of that
rank
curve.
for memory. Yeah, that's the best way to explain it. Absolutely. But I was also obnoxious as a person. So this first business, we really wanted to sell adjustable beds because I was selling memory foam products very shortly after Tempur-Pedic got really popular. It was really expensive, and then knockoffs started coming. That's roughly when I started playing around with it. And we found a vendor that would sell us the same adjustable beds that Tempur-Pedic would sell. We were able to get it for a little under 50% of what they were sold for by Tempur-Pedic. So I
Wow.
had a bit of room for markup. Well, and this wasn't wholesale either. There was a middleman, but knowing that I could sell it was really what I was looking for. We made a lot of money selling them because I targeted the manufacturer's name on AdWords. I was paying like $3 a day for ads. And we were getting a lot of phone calls because I had an 800 number when no one else had one. No one was using an 800 number. It was the internet. You had to pay, and this is back in the day where still had to pay for long distance. Not like on
Wow.
our cell phones where, I can call almost anywhere in my country. So um, we would absolutely, I had a pad of paper next to our phone in case my wife answered the phone. to reply to that because we got so many calls for the manufacturer. But what happened was we also sold a lot of those beds. The problem was our vendor didn't tell us that they owed the company over $100,000 and could not order more of the beds. So
Ooh.
while we're selling them actively, they can't ship. And it took about 3 months to realize this was a problem. It destroyed my business. We had probably a dozen, maybe 15 sold, and some of the money was long gone. We refunded anyone we could. It did destroy the business. So I turned to my now ex-wife, but I turned to her at the time and I said, I don't know what to do. I've never had a business before. I didn't break this. This shouldn't have happened, but it's not fixable. She said, what do I do? She said, well, you got the website to rank for, all those competitive terms. Why don't you teach that? Or no, why don't you do that? Why don't you do that? So for 90 days, I did SEO, but I didn't like the idea of having people on a hook to pay me forever. This was my biases doing damage to my business. I didn't like paying subscriptions, so I didn't want to charge them. So what I tried to do was like projects. I'll, boost the authority of your website, target these keywords, and I should be able to get you on the page one for them. And then, we'll take a look and see if you still need me. Maybe we can re-up. We can do a new project with new. What happened was I would tell people, give me 6 to 8 weeks to build this up. And that was included, by the way. There was no hidden fees or sneaky things every time, 2 weeks in. Why aren't we seeing? I told you I need 6 to 8 weeks, but yeah, but it's been we've waited enough. And I found that unreasonable expectations, because I was on a contract for a single job, which it happens even now. I mean,
Sure.
taking on the wrong client, sometimes they have unreasonable expectations. So back then I went through and like completed all the work and I turned to my ex-wife and I can't continue doing this. It's killing me. It was just constant rage. And I wasn't not delivering. I was delivering. I just needed the time that I told them to deliver. In fact, I'm smart enough. Yes, I'm smart enough to tell them this is going to take 6 weeks when it's going to take 4. But what I didn't realize was that they would be demanding it in 1. So
Your
their
timelines were
unreasonable
different.
behavior, well, and even better, I did it right. Like it from the perspective of a business owner, under promise, over deliver. I would tell them 6 to 8 weeks, knowing that almost always I could get it in 4. Almost
Excellent.
always. And usually there would be movement in 2 or 3. So I would be able to say, well, you were on page 7, we're on page 2, it's going along. But again, the demands came before the results almost every time. Even though I did everything right in my mind, like in my mind and my eyes, it was always a reflection of me. Their rage was a reflection of mine. Even though I was being kind to them, I had a very angry energy at the time. And it was reflecting off of me, even though I had no idea I had experience in retail. That was my life before I got sick. So I knew the customer is always right. They're not, but the customer is always right. I would
Exactly.
treat them that way. Didn't matter. The world was reflecting my energy back at me. And I had no idea. So 90 days in, I had completed every contract. We were starting to run low on money, and I turned to my ex-wife again. I said, now what, honey? We've officially had 2 businesses die in 3 months. I don't know what to do. She said, well, you learned it. You did it. Can you teach it? I think so. And that began my entrepreneurial journey, my guru days. So the first phase of my business, my first product was an utter nightmare that again, I'm kind of watching our time. I know we're getting close to our end here and I don't want to miss anything important. The first phase of my business were my guru days. That was about 7, 8 years. And I put on seminars and not knowing I shouldn't do that, I filled rooms in weird cities like Tampa and Madison, Wisconsin. got 100 people in the room, got people to come from all over the US, and we had a wonderful time because seminars had done so much for me. I used my relationships. Going to those seminars, I became friendly with just about every guru there was outside of maybe like the absolute top tier because I was obnoxious and violent, not physically, mentally. Like my energy was violent. So, but I guess I would say in a fun way. I was a thug who hadn't figured out I didn't need to be one anymore. So my thug attitude was very present in my day-to-day activities. I was obnoxious and I was fun. So I made lots of friends, and that got me lots of connections. And I ended up running a big software company, just me and one other guy. He had a little bit of help at different times, but it was one programmer and then eventually I brought in my best friend who was a design expert. Millions and millions of dollars sold in software. We did software for some other very large um, digital business companies. I had white label. We wholesaled my tools as well, and that just made stupid money. So eventually, my ex-wife and I separated, and I was utterly destroyed. And again, I know we're starting to run low on time. So first, I sold every asset I had, and there were many. So that helped for a little while. The financial burden was massive, and I just didn't have the confidence to do what I did before. So I started working behind the scenes. And my best friend, Harris Fellman, took me on as his marketing guy for his solo ads company. And I spent 10 or 12 years doing all the marketing things for him. I worked with some other large businesses. I learned how to run ads. I learned how to write copy. And I spent most of a decade behind the scenes. And just now, in recent history, the last year or so, I joined him actually potentially technically I joined two masterminds in the last 1 to 2 years. Have a mentor, have guidance. I have new books on the way. I have really interesting projects in the works and new training. Um, because I've spent all this time doing the work. In my original days doing the teaching, those two things combined, I'm one of those rare anomalies that isn't full of it. And if I teach something, it's because I actually tested it and it works. So I have systems. My one that's coming in a couple of days is called Accidental SEO. It was my first product when I first came back. And what it is, if you took SEO, looked at it, and if you've ever tried it, search engine optimization is very technical. It requires a lot of understanding of what they're looking for. So I took all of that and just tossed it in the garbage. Research is 5 minutes. No link building like at all. You really don't have to. I mean, you can, and of course, I talk about some smarter ways to do it, but don't have to. And generally, if you follow the process from start to finish, you can get free traffic without a doctorate in Google. So, um, oddly enough, my website had been quiet for so long that there was a penalty. So, I'm very big on proving my ideas.
Right.
So, I went through my entire process and nothing happened. Now, I've been in the game a long time. I have a pretty high tolerance for the internet kicking me in the head, but this one was rough because 18 months ago I taught this. It should still work. One of the things I learned from SEO is don't play into algorithms, play into systems, play into what they're looking for. So generally, I want to provide a good experience. So I avoid the stuff that makes things icky, pop-ups and aggressive things. Um, I want to be helpful. So I make sure the content's actually good. So if I put something out, it should, I mean, don't get me wrong. I don't know everything, but the goal is to produce value, help people. Generally, when I do that, I'm
Always.
rewarded, right? Yeah. So when I was accidental SEO is more about the value you provide than anything, but it is a process like any other. And when it didn't work, it scared the hell out of me. I ended up being able to fix it just using Google systems and testing and looking at how they were responding. And basically it was your website's been stale for years. You haven't added anything new to it in like over a year. We're not going to recognize your work until we're sure that you didn't get hacked, you're not hurting anybody with, bots or injections or anything weird. So anyways, all of a sudden, out of nowhere, it starts working. And I'm like, oh, thank goodness I'm not a moron. Best day ever. It's like, okay, I do still have my skills. I have my game. I'm on. Game on. Now I can move forward. Scared the hell out of me. I was like, am I stupid now? Am I so old? I'm no longer a legend. I'm just ancient. Retire me? I mean, thankfully that's not how it worked.
Ross, I love your story in that your early businesses were, and it's beautiful in that way because I deal with entrepreneurs and I deal with business owners, and let's be real, majority of business owners, their first one, two, three businesses don't make their millions. And I love the school fees you paid. And you came into the internet and this online space when it was, as you said, the Wild West. And the question I'd really like to ask you is, you started then, and now with the AI, is it as big a Wild West as it was before?
Bigger. Absolutely. Right now is worse than then because at least then you had to know something. You had to be able to say something unique to get noticed, right? You had to be a value of entertainment or, well, really a valuer of entertainment, right? And now you can know nothing and get attention. So
Is that a good thing or a
I
bad
think you
thing,
would
Ross?
agree with me that the dumb ones are usually the loudest. It's both. So the
Beautiful
AI
answer.
brains are being powered as much by the stupid as by the intelligent. Well, and that's why AI it cannot replicate me
Exactly.
and my
Exactly.
unique experience because I've been
I,
doing it so long. It's not even about knowledge. For me, it's about wisdom.
I love that. I did an AI course, and you might know him. It's Kane Minsker. He's a legend in the AI thing. Kane
Yes.
and his wife Alicia Minsker, and he was here in Johannesburg. And I love what he said. There was about 200 people in the room, and he said AI will not replace you. And you could see the whole audience go, because there's this fear mongering. You're going to be replaced by a little computer chip. And he said, AI will not replace you. And then I love his next statement. You will be replaced by somebody who's using AI. And it was like, whoa. And then he said, there's only two companies in the future, those using AI and those that are bankrupt. Because the ones using AI will literally and I love the way you put it, it's that value, and you remove the friction in business. So for
Yes.
you to do business with me, I might have exactly the same product as the person next door, but the value I give you and the lack of friction, you come to me as opposed to the guy next door. And I love that process. And I'm in the process of bringing AI into my business. And I love this fact where you will talk to my AI clone. And people say, I don't talk to AI clones. And I say, well, you've got a choice. You either jump and you disappear, or you talk to my clone and we move forward in the business, or we don't. Your choice.
I already did this to a certain degree, and it's not full AI clone yet, but it's my business brain. I uploaded a bunch of my books, including ones I haven't quite released yet, and I gave it my entire social media presence. I was able to export that.
Wow.
That is a absolute trick. Whether you're making gems with Gemini, you're doing projects with Claude or GPTs with ChatGPT, if you can. So for me, I've been on Facebook since 2009 or 2007, excuse me. So I have 17 years of my voice, and I exported all of my posts, imported it into ChatGPT, and I said, I want you to use this to have everything you export for me to have my voice, and it does almost flawlessly. In fact, it's giving when I ask it like theoretical questions about the kind of things that I do, new systems, it's finding things I wouldn't even think of.
Beautiful. You see, Ross, that's what I love about the AI. It's not going to replace us. It's going to help us to go into areas where and I'm not going to say our little brains because our brains are powerful, but next to
Sure.
AI, we are what can we say? We're like an ant. We tiny. And I love that process
Yes.
where use the technology and I say the AI is like fire. Fire you use correctly can cook your food, can warm you. Use it incorrectly, it's going to burn you and kill you. Same thing with any new technology.
100%. And the key, and this is the one that I'm finding that no one wants to hear this, but this is actually today's most important concept regarding AI. We must remember that the inputs are where its value comes from, and that if its input is the internet, it's
Correct.
half stupid. It is. So you
I
have
like what you're saying
that's
there.
where it gets stuff wrong.
I like exactly what you're saying there because, yes, sometimes people they want to give 3 sentences and say, but why isn't this chat GBT thinking exactly like me? And I love what you're saying. You've got what 17 years or longer and your books
Yeah.
and all of that, so that chat GBT from a how do we say a cerebral point of view knows you as almost as well as you do, and that, Ross, is where it becomes
Yes. Well, and
extremely
even in
powerful.
ways better.
Extremely powerful.
In some
Ross, I
ways better
love
than I
I
know
love
me
what we're
because it
doing.
sees things I can't.
We're getting close to the
Yes.
end here. I will ask you just one question. In your journey that you've done, how has mindset helped or hindered you to where you've got to today?
Knowing that you were going to come to me with this question guided a little bit of what I was talking about, where I
Excellent.
mentioned that I was a rage monster. Um, and if you think about it, yes, my background before I got sick played into that a bit, being a thug and being violent as a kid and whatever. But you'd be mad if you woke up one day and couldn't feel your feet. What happened was, though, that I held on to that for way longer than anyone ever should. And I was so angry that it had such an impact on my life and my business. I had people that had to walk away from me. And I didn't understand because I was so focused on my inner turmoil that I wasn't able to look in the mirror and be honest with myself that the behavior, that the attitudes that I had, that they were non-productive and even counterproductive to what I wanted in my life. When my ex-wife and I parted ways, I was utterly destroyed. I made mistakes and so did she, but those mistakes that I made were counter to who I thought I was. My identity is loyalty. I've always been very loyal between the military, between thug life, things from my youth, my friends. I bond fairly quickly, and I was disloyal to my wife, my ex-wife. It just destroyed my identity, and I took some time. I put myself back together. I lost all confidence, had to rebuild all of that, and had to let go of that rage because I met a woman who would absolutely not put up with that. And then I realized that anytime my voice raised, my kids would visibly wince. Not that I never hurt my children physically, but my screaming did. And finally, because of my connection with the woman I've been married, we've been together almost 10 years. In February, it'll be 10 years.
Well done.
I was able to correct my behavior with my children and sit down with them and tell them, I'm so sorry. I was not trying to hurt you. I couldn't see it. I was blinded by my rage and my anger, and I didn't see how it was hurting you, and I'm sorry, and I'm going to do better now. And I got therapy, and I started to see why things that should have gone right, like I did everything I knew to do, and then they'd fail. And I was finally able to see that it was the things that I couldn't see that were breaking the processes, the projects,
Well done.
the things. And as I removed those things, all of a sudden things just got better. And then I would find another thing about myself that I could face and change or evolve or transform. Sometimes I could take a negative and make it positive.
Beautiful.
My violence is unnecessary, but I promise you, if anyone were ever to threaten my wife, my kids, my dogs, I don't need to hit them. I can just say, this is not a good idea because what's about to come. If you move forward with harming this person, my response will be incredibly unpleasant. Now, I don't need to scream, curse, call names, none of those things. I went from seeing myself as a cripple and started working on my fitness. And I've been doing CrossFit for 5 years. And now my physical presence matches my mental, where it would be very unwise to harm my people. Because now I'm as big as I am. I'm as big as my attitude now. So
I
all of
love
these
that.
things have led me forward.
I love that, Ross. And on that note, we're going to be closing up shortly. Please give me your information so I can put it in the description. Send it to me on
Yes.
Messenger because I'd like people to get a hold of you directly. I do feel we'll have another conversation, but this one is pretty close. So I will end with this. Stay safe, stay healthy, stay blessed, and most importantly, be the light. Thank you, Ross. Cheers. Bye.
Thank you for having me.
When you like what you've seen or heard and it's brought value to your life, please like, comment, subscribe, whatever platform you're on, or subscribe, like, comment, whichever it is. Please do one of the three, or ideally all three. Peace be with you.